Okay, hello everybody. Today we're going to do a free response question, or I'm going to guide you through a free response question over the Phillips curve in relation to the foreign exchange market. So we're looking at foreign exchange market, so exports in and out of a particular country and how that affects employment and full employment and of resources. So let's get into it. So let's see. So it wants you. This is so include correctly labeled diagrams if useful or required in explaining your answers. A correctly labeled diagram must have all axes and curves clearly labeled and must show directional changes. If the question prompts you to calculate, you must show how you arrived at your final answer. Okay, so assume the Canadian economy is currently in recession and the government budget is in deficit. So, like all AP questions that are going to have like you explaining a graph, it's going to first off want you to show that graph, most likely. So A, that's what it's going to have you do. So draw a single correctly labeled graph with both short run and long run Phillips curves for the Canadian economy. So label the current short run equilibrium as point X. So let's go down to A. So if you your graph looks like this, so inflation rate is going to be on the left axis, and the unemployment rate is going to be on the bottom. Then it's going to be in recession, so the long run is going to be below full employment, and it's going to be about right down here on the short run. So inflation rate is going to be down, and unemployment rate is going to go up. Okay, so that's how A should be completed. So B. All right, so assume the government increases its deficit spending to restore full employment. So deficit is when you are spending more than you're earning. So they're increasing their spending, and they're increasing the rate that they're going into debt, but they're doing this to try to restore full employment. So what effects will this have on real interest rates in Canada? All right, so this is going to likely increase the interest rates, as it says. So interest rates will increase, and explains that an increase in government spending will increase the demand for loanable funds, or the decrease in taxes will decrease the supply of loanable funds, which will increase real interest rates in Canada. So, right, so if we increase the deficit, this is going to decrease the unemployment rate, and it's going to bring it back up to equilibrium right here. So where the short run and the long run are in line with each other. All right, so that should be part B. So part C. So based on your answer to part B, what will happen to financial capital flows to Canada? And if your assumption was they would increase, you are correct. The financial capital flows to Canada will increase, because that's the point of, oh, it signed me out. Hold on, I'll sign back in real quick. It's okay, I got 15 minutes. This won't take 15 minutes. Oh man, it's gonna make me, hold on. Technical difficulties. Right. Okay, we were on C. So based on your answer, probably what will happen to financial capital flows to Canada? So the point is to increase full employment and get the economy out of recession. So a company in recession is not having a lot of capital flow into Canada. And think of a business cycle like the circular flow model. Capital needs to be moving through the economy. So if you're in a recession, capital is not flowing. So right now during the corona crisis, the effect it's having on the economy, people aren't spending money, people are staying at home generally, and that circular flow model is not, it's malfunctioning, it's not working because money is not flowing, and that's we're beginning to see the beginnings of a recession. So yeah, if you are bringing the economy out of a recession, you're going to start seeing more financial capital flows. So it's right to say that they are going to increase. So you would be correct in saying that. If you're trying to get out of recession and you want capital flows to increase. All right, so part D. Canada and Norway are major trading partners. The exchange rate between the Canadian dollar and Norway's currency, the krone, is determined in a flexible foreign exchange market. Draw a correctly labeled graph of the foreign exchange market for the Canadian dollar and show the effect of the change in real interest rates identified in Part B on the equilibrium exchange rate of the Canadian dollar. Whew. Okay, so this is going to be a money market question. Okay, so down here, so it's going to be a leftward shift of the supply curve for the Canadian dollar. So it's going to be for the Canadian dollar, it's going to move to the left, but the Norwegian dollar is going to move to the right. So a leftward shift. So let's go back. So they're major trading partners, and the exchange rate between the Canadian and Norway's currency, the krone, is determined in a flexible. So draw a currently labeled graph of the foreign exchange market for the Canadian dollar. So there's a change in the effect of the real interest rate in Part B on the equilibrium exchange rate of Canadian dollar. So if capital flows into Canada are going up, it's going to increase demand, and our equilibrium is going to go up. So there's going to be a surplus of Canadian dollars in Norway. And of course, the quantity of Canadian dollars is going to decrease. So it's going to be a leftward shift of Canadian dollars, of the supply of Canadian dollars to the left, and an increase in demand in Norway for Canadian dollars. So decreased supply in Canada for the Canadian dollar, and an increase in demand in Norway for the Canadian dollar. So it'll look like that. All right, part E. What's it asking us? Given your answer to part D, what will happen to the international value of the Norwegian krone? So if there is an increase in the demand for it, as we saw it, so right here, so as this occurred, the international Norwegian krone will decrease, or the krone will depreciate. So it's going to decrease in value, which is what depreciate means. It's going to depreciate in value. That's the opposite of inflation, is deflation or depreciation, and the international value is going to decrease. And the Canadian dollar is going to increase on the international value scale. Okay, part F. Assume Norway's current account balance is 0. As a result of the change in value of the krone you identified in part E, will Norway's current account be in deficit, surplus, or stay the same? All right, so let's think. So assume Norway's current account balance is 0. As a result of the change in the value of the krone you identified in Part E, will Norway's current account be in deficit, surplus, or stay the same? So my assumption will be that it's in a deficit. Let's see if the response states that Norway's current account will be in surplus. It explains that the depreciation of the Norwegian krone will make Norwegian goods become relatively cheaper to Canadian buyers, which increases Norwegian exports, and Canadian goods will become relatively more expensive to Norwegian buyers, which decreases Norwegian imports. Okay. So yes, there is going to be a surplus for that particular one. Okay, so G. What effect will the change in the value of the Canadian dollar in Part D have on Canada's net exports? So the change in the value of Canadian and Part D. So change in value of the Canadian dollar. So we could assume that net exports will decrease as the value of the Canadian dollar increases. Net exports will go down because Canadian products begin to cost more. So it is so exports out of Canada for their products will go down. So there will be a decrease in net exports. Okay, Part H. So on your graph in Part A, show the effect of the change in Canada's net exports identified in Part G. And label the new short-run equilibrium as point Z. So Part A, so we had our graph for Part A, and now we're going to finally switch it up. So show the effect of the change in Canada's net exports identified in Part G, and label the new short-run equilibrium as point Z. So we showed that Canada's net exports decreased. So Z is going to be our new point right here, from X to point Z. So the new short-run equilibrium is going to go from X to Z right here. As because Canada's net exports are decreasing, so in the short run, that is going to be that new new point of equilibrium. And that's the whole question. I hope that was helpful. Be sure you saw the announcement for Zoom meetings next week. Looking forward to those and chatting with you guys. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.